Hey everyone, Derek here and welcome to another PlayerUnknown's Battleground mobile video. So today we're going to be taking a look at how the tutorial works. The tutorial that isn't really a tutorial. I was going to do this on the iPhone 10, but what happened is I logged in today and the tutorial was gone. So I'm pretty sure it disappears after you play a game or two or three. I don't know where, I honestly don't know when it disappeared. So I decided to download the game on my iPad mini 4 and bring it to you that way. So this video is pretty much for people who haven't invested a whole ton of time into Battlegrounds before. So I played it a lot on the PC, other people have played on the Xbox. But if you're new to the series, the interface is tricky. I mean, there are a lot of buttons, a lot more on-screen buttons and things to do than in comparable games like Fortnite. So I wanted to bring this to you and hopefully help you understand a little better what's going on. And then if you like this sort of thing, definitely subscribe to the channel because I'll be posting gameplay videos. I'll be posting like tutorials for early, mid, late game, that sort of thing. So tons more content coming up. This is just the beginning because I am excited about this. So let's go ahead and we'll select tutorial. And this is the tutorial. So for those of you hoping that you could actually play through a tutorial, I'm sorry. I will try to explain everything to the best of my ability. But what's going to happen is the first few games you're going to play, you're probably going to die early, and that's okay. That's how everybody learns. There are people who have thousands of hours in this game who are just going to own you, and then eventually you'll get the hang of how to move around with the interface and stuff, and how you'll survive. Like what sorts of strategies you can employ to ensure that you do well. So, like other Battle Royale games out there, you start with 100 combatants. So, when you join a match, either solo, duo, or squad, which is teams of 4, you will start out with roughly 100 people. It's never over 100. Sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's like 85. Usually it's in the 90s. And you'll be in a staging zone where you just hang out, you can move around, get a feel for the controls for around 2 minutes or so, depending on how close to the loadout you load in. So after you are in that staging zone, you end up teleporting into a plane. So you're in a cargo plane, and that is where you can parachute onto the island. So the island is this large 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer grid of towns and forests and hills and open fields and ocean. So a very, very dynamic world. So you get to choose when you parachute onto the island, and that determines where you start. And some people go for areas that have a lot of great weapons and gear and stuff, but a lot of people go there, so they're contested and there are a lot of early fights. Other people prefer to go the more rural route and just land in very sparsely populated areas where there might not be as much loot, but there's also not going to be as much competition. You procure your own supplies, so you get supplies. You get gear, supplies within houses and sheds, on picnic tables outside those areas, and then also in supply crates, which are dropped from another cargo plane. So the supply crates are very, very contested, so tons of people will fight and die over them, but the equipment inside them is very good. So usually, sniper rifles or automatic machine guns with 100-round capacity and all this cool stuff. Great armor, that sort of thing. Avoid the danger zone. Red zone, so we'll get into this in a gameplay tutorial, but red zone is basically an area where they are bombing. So once you'll see it on your mini-map as a giant red circle, and you have a little bit of time, say around 30 seconds or so, from when you see that circle till when they start randomly bombing within that zone. Now, you can be in the zone and survive and you don't get hit by a bomb, or you can be in the zone and you get hit by a bomb and you die. So it's dangerous. If you're inside, you're protected. So a lot of people will go inside if they're in the red zone and they can't get out of it, or they don't want to get out of it. And finally, be the last one standing. So this is a battle royale. and whoever is the last person standing wins the game and gets a ton of street cred and ranking and that sort of thing. So the play zone will shrink as the danger zone expands inward. So basically, the two zones you have to be concerned with are the danger zone, which a lot of people call the gas, or the blue zone, or the zone, or whatever. And that is, it's basically a giant bubble. It's a giant blue electric-looking bubble that starts out massive. So in the beginning of the game, it's outside the bounds of the entire island, and then it starts to shrink over time into smaller and smaller zones. Think like Hunger Games style, if you're familiar with that franchise. And basically it pushes people together to fight, because otherwise you'd have some guy who would, hide in a tool shed and go AFK, and then 8 hours later he's still in the shed, nobody found him, and the game's going on. So in order to prevent that, they close the zones over time. You have a certain amount of time to stay to get into the next zone before the zone starts to slowly close. And then if you're outside the zone, you start taking damage, and the smaller the zone, the more damage you take. So if it's a large zone in the beginning of the game and you're outside of it, you're not going to take that much damage, and you can out heal it. If you're if you step outside the zone very late in the game, you could die in as few as like 5 seconds or so, 5-10 seconds. So the safe zone is within the white circle. And then, like I said, the blue circle, which closes into the white circle over time, is the gas, or the zone, which you don't want to be out of. And then once this blue reaches the white circle, then there will be a new white circle contained within here. So it could be up here, it could be dead center. It's very random how it shrinks. And if you and then the process repeats. So you have about 2 minutes or so usually, and then once again the blue circle starts to close into that new white circle, and then once it reaches it, a smaller white circle pops up, and it keeps repeating until there's one person left standing. So like I said, this is safe zone, this is the danger zone, which is outside the blue circle, and then the play zone shrinks. So that's pretty much how to play the game, what you're trying to go for. And let's go to controls. So there are a ton of controls here. Again, follow me for a gameplay video where I'm not going to try to win. I'm just going to show you what everything does. That way you can get a feel for it. So there's a joystick on the left. So basically, you're going to be always using at least 2 thumbs. And the left thumb, this is going to be natural for some people, and other people, it's something that you're going to just practice and get used to over time. But this thumb controls your movement. So if I push this one forward, this guy will start running straight. If I push it right, he will start running right, backwards, and so on. And then in order to change the camera angle, to actually look around and to also adjust his direction, you move, you swipe left or right on this side of the screen. So, and we can change that. I'll show you how to change that. But basically how you're going to be doing is you're going to have your thumb here or your finger here, and then you're going to be manipulating this virtual joystick. And as you're doing that, you're going to be moving around, changing direction with this. So generally, I generally just go straight ahead or straight to the side, and then I use this to adjust my orientation. So in the on the PC version, this is your WASD, and then this is your mouse. So obviously a lot more intuitive and a lot easier with a mouse. It's a lot easier to slide around. So tap here to lie prone. So this will make you prone, which makes you more difficult to spot, but also much, much slower. And there are disadvantages and advantages to doing that. Crouching, pretty much the same concept. You can move faster than prone, but slower than when you're standing. And again, harder to see, a little harder to hit. You have a smaller hitbox. So I'll talk more about that in the actual gameplay tutorial that I do. So that's those guys. Right here is crouch and prone. This is jump. So here you can jump or climb. So you can basically climb over obstacles via vaulting, or you can jump over small obstacles. And this is great to avoid certain things. It's also great to get out of situations, or get the jump on somebody, show up where they don't expect you to by kind of outsmarting them. So another useful thing, and like I said, you know, you're using this thumb is pretty much always on this joystick to move around, and this one is doing a lot. I mean, you're adjusting orientation, and then you're also tapping these buttons. So like I said, there's a learning curve, but it definitely starts to make sense over a little while. So that is that. Let's take a look at parachute here. So here is your mini map. You tap the mini map to view it larger. You can, I'll get into this in our tutorial, but basically you can move while you're looking at the mini map big, which is great because then you don't have to stand still. But when you're in the plane, you don't have to do anything, and you can't do anything until you start getting over the island. So it's a great time to look at where the plane is flying. There's a virtual flight path plotted, which is nice, and then you can figure out where you might want to drop and jump. So you can jump when you're near where you want to go. So this is the flight path you can see here, and you can tap a location on the minimap, and it will give you your distance and heading, your orientation to that marker, which is just useful because especially if you're not familiar with the island, if you want to drop in a certain zone of houses or something, for example, it looks a lot different from the air than it does when you're actually down there on the ground. So we'll take a look here. So you can adjust your view, your parallel, slide the joystick up to glide. So this is how you adjust your orientation while you're falling. And again, I'll do a video of this so you can get an idea of how it actually works. But the goal is basically the flatter you are, just like if you were actually doing this in real life, you have more surface area, more wind resistance, and you fall slower. If you push it forward, if you angle yourself forward so that you fly straight down, then you're going to be flying faster. And some people fly slower like this because they can glide longer if they want to glide to an area that's further away from where the plane's dropping. Some people like to go as fast as they can to get on the ground first, get that weapon, get those early kills, and hopefully not die right away. So different strategies. And like I said, you know, this looks confusing, but when you see it in practice, it'll make a lot more sense. Here you go, you've got, it says adjust your view so you're perpendicular to ground, slide the joystick up to dive, tap parachute. You'll parachute automatically. So this little white zone here, so this is your altitude. And then once you get to this white zone on the bottom, you will parachute automatically so you don't have to worry about going splat. Most people don't pop the parachute until they have to because, like I said, most people are trying to get down to the ground as fast as they can, beat some people out for those early weapons, and go from there. So let's just go here and use the camera to see if other players are near you. So if you want just a free look, so once you've established your flight path kind of and where you're going, if you want to look around. So far, I haven't had great success in doing this actually, just because it doesn't seem to render other players that far away. In the PC version, if you could be halfway across the map and you'll see a ton of people dropping in a town or military base or wherever, and you can actually tell how many people you're going to be competing with in a certain area. Here, at least on the phone, it didn't render the other people in until we were on the ground almost, so that might get better, but for now, it wasn't very useful, and it's another thing to worry about. If you're new to the game, I just worry about trying to get better at landing where you want to land in a decent amount of time. I think that's way more important. So your backpack is here. It's most of the time it's covered up by the joystick because you tend not to have to use it too much because the game does a great job of deciding what to pick up automatically if you have that option selected. And again, that's another thing we'll go into in another video, but I ended up not using the backpack tapping too much because the game does a pretty good job, especially if you're new, of selecting good things for you to keep. But you can tap the backpack and you'll see what you're carrying, you'll see what capacity you have, and you'll be carrying things like weapons, you'll be carrying things like accessories for the weapons, so like silencers or flash hiders or grips, you'll be carrying ammo, of course, for the weapons. And then you'll be carrying various healing items. So they all take up capacity, and grenades too. There's a ton of stuff. But basically, everything takes up capacity, and you want to make sure you have capacity to carry the stuff that you want to carry. So, and it says drag an attachment to an empty slot to equip it. Again, it will auto-equip the first scope and grip and stuff, so you really don't have to, when you're new to the game, don't worry about that. The game does a pretty good job of equipping armor automatically and all that stuff on its own. You can drop weapons if you drop, a portion of something. So if you have 100 rounds of ammo and you want to drop 50, you can do that, or you can drop the whole thing to free up capacity. It says alternatively drag an item outside of the backpack to discard it. I found this was faster than trying to drop all. I found it easier to just slide things to the left here and drop them that way. So we're into weapons now. And you can swipe the screen to aim and tap fire to shoot. So depending on your configuration of the on-screen display, I got rid of this left fire button. Again, another video. We'll talk about that because that's a whole nother thing, setting up this. So you're going to be firing with this button or this button, but this is how you fire. So there's no trigger. It's not like you have a controller. And this is tough. This is really tough to get used to because there's recoil when you fire, and it can take your aim offline. And there's some weapons like this is a let's see if I can read it. So this looks like a pistol. It looks like a revolver. So this is single shot, and then let's pretend this is the Glock 18C, which is the automatic one. So that one would have an auto mode. So for this guy, you have to keep tapping to fire. For an automatic, you can hold it down. For a burst fire, you can hold in short bursts. So depending on what weapon you have, you're going to be manipulating this on-screen control differently. And like I said, when you're new, just focus on hitting the button and firing at what you want to fire at. Don't worry too much about getting the taps right and stuff, because it's just very overwhelming, and you'll learn over time. So it says tap the crosshairs to enter aiming mode. So this is if you have a scope, you can do that. You can also do it normally, even if you don't have a scope, it will zoom in slightly. You'll be looking over the sights of whatever weapon you have. I did not use this much. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that scopes in a mobile game make that much sense, at least right now. And my opinion might change on that. But for me, it's a lot easier to just focus on the aiming part and focus on the movement part, trying to avoid their fire while you're knocking them down. If you're trying to scope, it's so slow that honestly, I don't find myself using it much yet. And like I said, I'll change. If I'm wrong there, I'll annotate it, or I'll make another video and talk about the merits of doing that. But for me, especially if you're new, just focus on trying to find people before they find you and engaging them in a good way. And that's way more important in building that sort of muscle memory and that sort of like decision making than trying to get a 8x scope and sniping somebody from 200, 300, 400 yards away, because that's way harder to do. And the bigger the scope, the narrower your field of view, and the harder it is to actually focus, because you might not see the guy who's 50 yards to your right then, and he just takes you out. So tap the button above the weapon to switch between firing modes. So this is an assault rifle that can fire in single or automatic, or burst fire, and then tap the weapon to change them. So you have two primary weapons, and if you don't want to reload or whatever, you can swap them at any time. Maybe one has a scope on it, maybe one doesn't. One's an automatic, one is a shotgun that's a lot stronger at short range, stuff like that. Single fires one bullet at a time, great for long distances. Burst fires multiple rounds at a time to increase the chance to hit a distant target. Burst mode is your friend, especially or full auto, continuously fire as long as you're great for close range. So burst and full auto are your friends when you're new to the game, because spray and pray is a strategy that does work, especially in a mobile game, and it's just a lot easier when you're learning the whole interface to just get an automatic weapon and fire that way. It gives you a much better chance at engaging successfully. And here are your non-firearm weapons. These are your pans, your grenades. I wouldn't worry about those too much when you're new. Focus on just using your primary and your secondary, and this is something that will really come later, because it just takes time. It takes concentration away from doing the basics, and sometimes when you do that, you try to get fancy. That's when I said that's when you fail. So here's your throwables. So these are your grenades. Like I said, don't worry about them too much. You've got frag grenades that do damage, smoke grenades that provide cover smoke, flashbangs that blind a target, and I don't know if Molotov cocktails are here or not. They do damage over time if you hit somebody with them. I assume they're in this game, but I haven't seen one yet, so that's probably just me. But like I said, these guys, don't focus on this. Just focus on a good automatic or semi-automatic weapon because you'll be doing more damage, and when you're new to the game, that's what you want to learn. Just get very proficient in that before you explore too much with throwables. Say throwables will explode after a certain amount of time. You can set a long or short trajectory. So if you want to throw a grenade further or shorter, you can cancel so that it doesn't blow up. And then tap and hold to see simulated trajectory. So if you want to see where it's going to go, where it's modeled to go, you can throw them through windows. You can do some cool stuff. But like I said, very rarely, and there are times definitely on the PC version, but in the mobile version, at least for me so far, very rarely have I ever had to use a grenade where I couldn't just use a weapon to engage a suspect, to engage one of those people. So go to consumables quick. We are running out of battery here. Hopefully the camera lasts. Tap here to view consumables. So consumables are your healers. So boosts increase boost, which increases health, regeneration, and movement speed. So if you're at or above 75% health, the only thing that will heal you is a med kit, which will heal you to 100 but takes a long time, or boost items, which heal you over time. And then health recovery are your guys that heal you to 75%, which are more common. Those are bandages and med kits, or bandages and first aid kits rather. So, and the game will intelligently decide what you should use to heal if you leave that option on default, smart heal. So just tapping this button is usually enough to heal you. And like I said, when you're new, it's very overwhelming, and that's what I would do. I would just use that button. So tap use consumables to restore health. This is your health indicator as your health is white when it's full, and then it goes red as you get down there. If you go to 0, you're out of the game. And that can go quick. If somebody has an automatic weapon or a shotgun at close range or something, that can be very quick. So definitely mind that health bar. And if you have a consumable that you can use and you're in a safe place, definitely use that, because that might give you that 1 or 2 extra bullets absorption where you can kill somebody else and you're not going into the lobby and having to start another game. So vehicles are not that easy to use. They're great on desktop. On the mobile version, they're not that easy to use. But let's talk about how to operate them. You go up to a vehicle and you can drive or get in. So get in is to get in as a passenger. If you're playing duos or squads, that's a good idea. There are certain instances where you want to go to a pass. So I'm not even getting into that. That's just a mess. So drive is if you want to drive the vehicle, and then based on what your settings are, you can drive the vehicle with, again, a combination of your left and right thumb, and the left thumb will do something, the right thumb will do something. Usually one is controlling your speed, the other one's controlling your direction, and there are a number of interfaces there to drive vehicles, which we'll look at, like I said, in another video with the settings. So you can see here, this is your generic, this is the default, is directional buttons, make you go forward and backwards like an RC car, and then left and right. The vehicle's durability, this is the vehicle, so this is your health bar, this is the vehicle's health bar. If this goes to 0, it will blow up and kill you. So definitely be mindful of that. That will go down if the vehicle hits something, it will go down if the vehicle takes a large fall, or if it's getting shot at. Or if it's on fire or stuff like that too. So some weird cases, but usually you'll see this go down. It won't go down as fast as your health bar. The vehicles are more durable than you are. And if you see it going low, though, you're probably gonna want to get out and get away from it, because once it starts smoking and it's low like that, that's an easy way to die. And then tap change to move to another seat. That's if you're driving with somebody else, or there's some instances where you can switch your seat and either fire on somebody or use a consumable and then switch back to the driver position. It's very popular on the desktop version. But if you're new to the game like I said, driving a vehicle, learning to drive in a way that gets you where you want to go safely is more important, because the vehicles, you'll learn quickly that turning is not super straightforward. These things realistically roll, they drift, they do not stop and start instantly. There's definitely a bit of physics behind them. So learning how to drive each vehicle drives differently, is more important than, you know, trying to do some fancy switch to the passenger side, drink a, you know, an energy drink, or use a bandage, and then, you know, switch to the back seat and shoot somebody, and then switch back to driver's seat in 5 seconds, because that'll come, but it's generally not necessary, at least not early on. Last thing, swimming. Swim mode enabled when you enter water. Use the left joystick to move and swipe the right side of the screen to change direction. So here is your so this is, again, your direction. This is your directional control, and then this is your dive surface, and then left and right. So it's like your WASD, very similar to how it works on the ground. And this is your height. I haven't swam much, honestly. I'll be honest. I haven't needed to. So I guess up and down. I'm kind of learning this with you guys, so sorry about that. Up is to surface. Down is to swim under the surface. When you're under the surface, you can't be hit, or it's very difficult to be hit because the bullets stop when they hit the water. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to get out at some point, because you do have a breath bar, and if you run out of air, you will take damage and die potentially. So you know, just know that while water is safe, you're slow in it, and other people will be able to see you in the water, and that can get dangerous too. So here you go, up to surface, down to dive, and then this is your air. And like I said, when this turns red, you start losing health, and you can very quickly die if you're way under the water trying to avoid things. So that is the tutorial. That's 27 minutes of me talking. If you're still watching at this point, congratulations. And thank you, because it definitely means a lot. I really like this game on desktop. I really like it on mobile. There are things that I hope to see changed or improved on, but it's an interesting game. It's a really cool concept. It's a lot of fun. And I hope that this tutorial gave you a little bit of an appreciation, at least, for how to play the game and what the game's all about. So definitely subscribe if you like this sort of content, because I'm going to be doing a ton more tutorials, and I'll be doing tutorials where I'm actually playing a game, not with the intention to win, but with the intention to show you how to play it better. So thanks again, and I hope to see you in a future video soon.